Yo, what's going on, you guys? This is Day1, and I'm going to be giving you guys another YouTube video on New World. And this video I'm going to be giving you guys is going to be on what to buy from the Gypsum Kiln for PvE. This isn't meant for PvP at all, but there are decent items in the kiln that are pretty good for PvPers as well. This is meant for those that really want to be able to find those early close to abyss items without having to use the trade post or rely heavily on RNG from the doubloon crates from like Cutlass Keys. These items in the Gypsum Kiln are also guaranteed to be 700 gear score as well, making it even nicer to have. But before I even do that, first things first is we're going to go over all the dungeons you should at least be doing once a day in order to purchase some of these items in the kiln. So there are 5 dungeons that offer 1000 dense materia every single day whenever you clear the dungeon, but you have to make sure you pick up the quest inside the dungeon. It's not going to be outside, it's going to be inside the dungeon. You talk to the quest giver, and once you complete it and you do all those objectives, make sure you don't miss it. You can sometimes go back in certain dungeons. You can go back and pick up the items, whatever. But yeah, once you've completed the dungeon, the quest giver is gonna have his little green arrow above his head at the very end of the dungeon. Turn it in, and you get 1000 dense materia for that specific dungeon, as well as some gold, and I believe some dark matter and 1 gypsum orb. So the quests or the dungeons are going to be Laz, Gen, Ennead, Forge, and Glacial Tarn. So for those of you that don't know, Lazarus is going to be located here in Reekwater, right over here. So it's in Reekwater, and then Gen is going to be located in Eden Grove, right up here. And then Ennead is going to be in Brimstone. Forge is right over here inside Great Cleave, and then on the right side, which is also in Great Cleave, is Glacial Tarn. Also, I don't think you actually need to go into the map to do that. I believe you could just go to Expeditions and just click here. Now, these are the only quests that give 1000 dense materia and 1000 dense materia. But the thing is, there are other dungeons that do give quests as well. So every single one of these dungeons, except for Savage Divide, also has a quest. But the quests like Barnacles and Blackpowder, the quest reward gives you 35 doubloons instead of 1000 BnB dense materia. And then Tempest only gives you the weapon crates, but they're going to be 625, so it's not even worth bothering doing that at all. And then you have Amrine, Starstone, Depths, and Dynasty. These are all under level 60, so they're going to just give you regular materia, which isn't worth anything because it takes a lot of regular dense materia to turn it into not dense materia, regular materia to turn it into dense materia, and it's just not worth the time or effort doing that at all. You might as well just wait till it's mutated so you actually get a decent amount of materia or dense materia. And again, Savage Divide just does not have a quest inside. So the only quests or the dungeons that are worth doing is Genesis, Garden of Genesis, Lazarus of Instrumentality, Empyrean Forge, Ennead, and Glacial Tarn. Only those 5 quests every day. And you can also end up clicking random to get some extra gold and whatnot. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so first things first is when you open up the Gypsum Kiln, you're going to notice all these are maximized. Just go ahead and minimize all of them. Obviously, you want to make sure you've done your gypsum orb stuff, and then you get your weekly gold, which is 1.5k gold and 250 dark matter. You need 220 gypsum orbs. And then, you can also get your materials, etc., etc. Now, the thing that you're going to probably notice is on your screen, you probably don't have all the weapons and gear unlocked. The reason why is because they all require some form of levels. So you have to go get at least level 1 in Arcana, level 1 in weaponsmithing, engineering, weaponsmithing, gear, armoring, jewel crafting, etc., etc. So just go and level everything at least to level 1, which is very easy to do. So for the weapons and gear that you're going to want to end up getting, or the weapons that you're going to want to end up getting in Lazarus, alright, so this is for the Lazarus Instrumentality replicas. The first one is going to be Ritual Blessing. So I wouldn't, well, okay, I don't want to say get these in order. I'm just telling you what is worth getting. So the Ritual Blessing is pretty decent for healers in general to get because it has 2 damage perks. So if you're a healer that is an aggressive healer, like not aggressive, but you know, a good healer will always use their Void Blade to help DPS. This is pretty good because it provides crit damage for yourself, obviously, and then attunement, which is also pretty decent for single targets. And then obviously the third perk is just kind of like up there, up in the air, like Keen or Refreshing Move or whatever. So Ritual Blessing is a pretty solid Void Gauntlet. The next one is going to be Stalagmite, I believe is how you pronounce it. And this is going to be for your Sword and Shield tanks. So this is decent because it has Enchanted, as you're always pretty much going to be spamming light attacks a lot, and then Hated, so it'll be almost pretty much impossible for you to ever lose threat. And obviously you would end up using something like the Butcher or even a different sword, but this is pretty much a free sword for those of you that want to get into tanking and want to use Sword and Shield instead of a Greatsword. Speaking of Greatsword, the Boulder Shard. So I would recommend the Boulder Shard for any DPS that wants to go ahead and start using Greatswords if you don't have Serenity. And Transient Crits is very, very good because of the fact that you're always hitting an enemy from the backside, which means you're getting 100% crits off of them. Now there's going to be some enemies that don't have a back, such as Chartis and Scylla and pretty much any snake boss, so you won't be able to get these guaranteed crits. Obviously, like your best option for Boulder Shard as the third perk would probably end up being something like Keen, so that way you have a higher crit chance whenever you're doing your heavy attacks with Boulder Shard. So yeah, Boulder Shard is definitely probably one of the best greatswords to get if you do not have Serenity. But yeah, next is going to be Warrior Shame. So the reason why I say Warrior Shame is because not every DPS, but pretty much any Greatsword DPS or Spear DPS needs to have a Great Axe as an offhand. Not every single one of them, but most of them. And the reason why is because it's used for clumping. It's not used for anything else, and obviously it comes at 700 gear score, and then you would hope that you get something like Enfeebling Maelstrom on the Great Axe, which would make it probably one of the best Great Axes you could possibly get. Obviously, Keen and Rogue is kind of redundant because with backstabs it's guaranteed crits, and Keen is just crit chance. But overall, Warrior Shame is not a bad option when it comes to Great Axes. And the last option is going to be the Ritual of the Hereafter. Now, if you're a healer, this is definitely going to be something you're going to want to get because it comes with Refreshing Move and Fortified Sacred Ground. Now, obviously, you can run Fortified Sacred Ground on the Life Staff or you can use it on the gear, but there's no free gear that has Fortified Sacred Ground with Enchanted Word, so it would be pretty tough on getting that. Now, that's why I always say Ritual of the Hereafter is very, very, very good for healers, especially if you're just starting out as a healer. And the Refreshing Move is just always going to be good because it helps you get your cooldowns back faster. And then for your third perk, getting something like Savior or Blessing is also very nice because it's just more healing. Everything else is pretty much not worth getting. Like Stone Soul is decent for tanks, except you would have to rely on the chance of getting Enchanted Word, and there's just better options. Weathered Concrete is just pretty terrible. The accessories are not that great. I guess as a tank, you could technically go with Heavy Earring, as it gives Nimble, Healthy Toes, and Constitution, and then you would just rely on getting a decent third perk. But next, we're going to go ahead and look at the Genesis Materia. So for Genesis, I ended up putting cleaning or cleansing whip, and the reason why is it's pretty decent for a tank as an offhand, only for the disease. It's not really used for anything else. You would have obviously have to heavy attack with it. Um, this would mainly be used for things like nature mutations or certain like bosses like in Ennead or Starstone at the final bosses like on the bird and the bull. You can apply disease on them and it'll make them come back with even less health. And same thing on Starstone, you can do that on the last boss when he comes back to life. It has him come back with less. So the more disease you have, the less health they end up coming back with. And it's the same with the nature mutation, because nature mutation, they generally have compost from the enemies dropping. So when the enemies get compost to drop, having extra disease is going to reduce how much the enemies are being healed. So cleansing whip is a pretty solid option. And it's not even just for tanks, but even a DPS technically could have it as an offhand just to apply the disease, since it lasts for 8 seconds and only procs off of a heavy attack. And next is going to be the, where is it, Enchanted Roots. So another great sword. The reason why I put this is because it has Keen, and I mean the Shirking Arcanes, whatever, but Keen's decent, and then all you'd really have to do is just rely on whether it gets Trenchant Crits or Trenchant Strikes, and then its strength. Obviously, it's not like the best greatsword in comparison to the Boulder Shard, but it's still decent enough for you to use and like just be useful, I suppose. And then next is going to be Hollow Trunk. Just like the Warrior Shame, you're only going to use the Great Axe only for its great clumping. So hopefully you get Enfeeling Maelstrom, so that the more Great Axe rolls that you can get from not just Gen, but from Laz and all these other dungeons, the technically like the higher chance you have of getting Enfeebling Maelstrom. But yeah, you would just use Hollow Trunk for the same reason you would use Warrior Shame, which is again just for the clumping. Next is going to be the Bramble Branch. So the reason why I put Bramble Branch on here is because having a spear player is always needed in your dungeons and even in the raid. Ideally, you would want to have Enfeebling Skewer, because Enfeebling Skewer means you do more damage. I mean, not more damage, the enemies do less damage as it applies the most amount of weaken any weapon can with a single ability. And then it comes with Keen and Keenly Jagged, which isn't terrible. Keenly Jagged is kind of a dead perk for most comps, because you can only have one person apply Keenly Jagged anyways. Next is going to be the Life Channeler. Now, this used to be very good for PvP, but ever since Cutlass Keys released all the 710 gear that you can pretty much get for free, it's definitely better to just go to Cutlass Keys and get the Life Staff over there, as it's 710 gear score and literally the same exact perks and attribute. And so there's just like no reason to waste your materia on a Life Well Channeler. But I did just want to put this out just in case someone does maybe want to just get this Life Staff for some reason. And then next is going to be the Morgul's Maul. The Morgul's Maul is a very good hammer for tanks, as it already comes with Hated and Refreshing Move, which is decent. But the thing is, with the current update, I suppose, hammer is kind of like not used as much for the end, like speedrun type of tanks now, just because the CC chain on the hammer is nowhere near as good as it used to be. Like, hammers are still pretty decent to have, but most tanks are swapping off of hammer to have a flail, as it provides better utility. But the hammer still does a decent amount of CC. So if you do want a tank with a hammer, having Morgul's Maul is probably going to be the most ideal hammer to get. And then hopefully it comes with something like Sundering Clear Out, which would make it even better. Now, the best item to make sure you end up purchasing first from the Genesis Materia section is your Grove Light. And the reason why, even though it's split stat, it comes with health and nature protection. It is strength and dex, but the thing is, it can be used on any and every single build in the game, whether you're a tank, healer, or DPS. because it's not like it's going to make or break your build. Obviously, you're not going to be min-maxed as a healer for having 16 extra strength and 16 extra dexterity. But you still do end up actually using strength and dex in your builds regardless because of the light attack damage increase from the 25 node on strength, and same with dex for giving you 5% crit chance on the 25 node. But I guess for the most part, if you're not super min-max like that, obviously the strength dex isn't going to be great for you. But again, I mean, it's still going to be overall a free nature protection and health amulet, and I highly recommend any and every single build to get this first before you get anything else in the Gypsum Kiln for Genesis. Next is going to be the Berry Pickers. So just like the Grove Light, it is split stat strength con, but it does have Enchanted Word, and if you don't have Enchanted Word gloves, light gloves, these are very good, especially for nature mutations, because it comes with also arboreal conditioning, which makes you take 5% less nature damage, and it can stack with up to 5 pieces basically. You can, or 6 I suppose because of your shield. But arboreal conditioning is very nice for nature mutations because of the constant nature ticks that you will be taking. So yeah, having berry pickers is also very, very, very nice, especially if you're a strength-based build, like with spear or greatsword or hatchet or whatever it is going to be nice to have. And then the last item for the rapier, spear, and bow musket players, Soul Pollen is going to be probably the best and most ideal ring to try to gamble for, aside from the Grove Light, obviously. Like, you wouldn't gamble on Grove Light, you would just buy it because it's guaranteed health nature protection. But after you do that, Soul Pollen is going to be the next accessory you end up gambling for if you are someone who does use rapier or spear, because it comes with thrust damage and leeching, and then you just have to hope and pray that you get hardy. Hardy is very important for every single build because it gives you 10% more stamina, which allows you to do double dodges without being stammed out. And then but yeah, like, hardy is basically a 20% chance to be applied on the ring. It's the same chance as sacred and some, I forget what the other perk was, but yeah, it's a pretty high chance, but the chance is shared with other really not good perks. Now, the next one that we're going to look at is going to be Ennead. So for Ennead, I ended up putting I believe it was the Strike Back, wherever, no, not Strike Back, Spear of the Defender. I don't know where that's at. Oh, right here, Spear of the Defender. So, Spear of Defender is okay. I only put it on here because, you know, if you have more spear options, you have basically a higher chance of getting Enfeebling Skewer. I put it on here because it comes with Vicious at the minimum, and Keeling Fortified isn't necessarily a dead perk, but it's like half a perk because you don't really need the Fortify, but it's not like it's going to hurt you having that Fortified. And then you would just hope you get Enfeebling Skewer on it. And then the next item is going to be the Hippo Strength Warhammer. And the reason why is because Vicious and Keeling Empowered isn't bad at all, and then it's also another chance of getting Sundering Clear Out for those of you that want to tank or even have a hammer as an offhand as a DPS, because it doesn't have hated, so you won't build up any threat with it necessarily. And the next thing is going to end up being the Azoth Battery. So once you've ended up buying the items that you wanted, Azoth Battery will basically be the last thing you end up gambling for, because it's magnified amulet with health, and then you just hope and pray that it comes with a protection on it, because a protection amulet with health and magnify is great for every single build, because you can just change your magnify in your skill or in your attribute trees without having to rely on different amulets. But again, it's a gamble because refreshing does have a pretty high chance to roll, whereas protection is like around like a 15% chance or whatever it is. But there's a bunch of different options, or, you know, there's a bunch of different protection options. So hopefully you end up getting decent protections with Azoth battery. And then next is going to be Life Leap. Life Leap is also a magnified earring, practically free 700 earrings for any and every build, useful for both healers, tanks, and DPSs, as it comes with Refreshing Toast and Healthy Toast. Healthy Toast is pretty decent. It's not like very amazing or anything, but it is decent to have. And then obviously like the best option would have been something like Empowering Toast or even Purifying Toast instead of Healthy Toast. And then hopefully you end up getting something like Nimble as the third perk for Life Leap, as Nimble just regenerates your stamina a little bit faster. And then next is going to be the Coal Soul Boots. These are going to be medium boots, but they're pretty decent for those of you that are going to be using Rapier Firestaff or Musket, and you have a Fire Gem inside your Rapier. Obviously you would have to be like a Rapier build and not a Blood build, but the reason why this is pretty decent is because of Fire Harnessing giving you an increase towards your Empower for fire damage, having Refreshing, and then hopefully you get Enchanted Ward. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend buying these, but if it's the last thing, like you're just looking, you have extra dense materia and you have nothing else to really go for, then why not go for the Coal Soul? Next, and the next one would be the Grave Robber's Hat. Now, if you don't have an Enchanted Ward headpiece, just buy this. It's guaranteed to give you Enchanted Ward, and it's magnified, so it works for every single build. And so this should definitely be the first thing you end up buying in the Ennead materia section if you don't have a medium headpiece with Enchanted Ward. And the last one is going to be the Hardy Pants. So if you're not using Attuned Leather Pants or you just don't have it for some reason, Hardy Pants is fine to get, but I would just honestly highly recommend going out to finishing your Elysian Wilds quest line so you can get the Attuned Leather Pants, because it's basically the same thing except you can put Enchanted Ward on these legs, whereas Attuned Leather Pants you cannot, but you get plus 10 in every single one of your attributes. And then now we're going to go ahead and look at the Empyrean Forge. Oh my gosh, I'm getting so many pop-ups from these. It's actually really annoying. The Empyrean Forge replicas. There's got to be a way to actually turn the chat off, right? Pretty sure. That is not it. You know, it is what it is. Whatever. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at the Empyrean Forge ones real quick before I get distracted again. Sorry, you guys, ADHD. Anyways, so for Empyrean Forge, the weapon you're going to want to end up going for is going to be Strike Back, because again, Trenchant crits, so it's guaranteed to have Trenchant crits on it, and Energizing Counter, which is pretty nice. Especially if you're a DPS using Calamity Counter, which you generally will for certain bosses, as it's going to be better than using Rupture, because it's going to give you stamina back, and two, it's basically free defense, like a free block. And then the next one is going to be Commanding Strike. So this used to basically be like the old best in slot Great Axe to have for just with Enfeebling Maelstrom, because Enfeebling Maelstrom or Maelstrom and I believe Reap applies grit when you use them, so just getting that extra damage with using Thwarting Strikes was nice. But I mean, honestly, it doesn't even really matter because you're just using the Great Axe to clump. So hopefully you get a Enfeebling Maelstrom on your Great Axe. So it's basically just another Great Axe roll, just like all the other materia chance rolls. Next is going to be your Flame Spout. Flame Spout is a pretty solid musket. So normally I don't even recommend buying any muskets, but this is actually very solid in terms of damage-wise for a musket, so I would definitely recommend getting the Flame Spout if you are someone who plans on using a musket offhand in general, whether you're a spear or especially rapier. It's going to be pretty nice because there are going to be certain situations where having a musket is going to be nice to have. Next is going to be the Fire Poker. So just like the other spear I ended up recommending, Keen and Keenly Empowered. Keenly Empowered is, it's okay. I mean, you don't need it because you're pretty much perma empower capped with spear. But I mean, as long as you have a sword and shield, DPS, or tank in your group with leadership, you're going to be capped on empower with Oblivion. Otherwise, I mean, this Keenly Empowered does help you keep yourself at max empower. And then Keen is decent, but again, you're only using it for enfeebling Skewer. And then the next one is going to be Fire of Life. So just like the Ritual of the Hereafter, Fire of Life also gives Fortifying Sacred Ground with Blessed, and then all you do is hope for Refreshing Move, which is a much lower roll than trying to get Blessed on the Life Staff. But I mean, anyways, it's still another really good Life Staff for those of you that just want to keep gambling for a decent Life Staff. The next one, which is probably the most important thing to get from the Empyrean Forge Materia on Gypsum Kilns, is going to be the Empty Hearth. So the Empty Hearth gives you free flame protection and empowered, and then hopefully you just get health, because that would make the Empty Hearth your best in slot flame protection amulet, because it also has magnified, so you would never need to swap your amulet out for any other amulet, as it already comes with flame protection and empowered. Because the reason why empowered is just so important for builds, especially DPSs, is because it just extends the empowered duration. Next is going to be Charcoal, which is a pretty solid earring, at least for tanks, because of Fortifying Toast, so it allows you to be a lot more tanky. Refreshing is decent, you don't really need it though. If it had Refreshing Toast and Fortifying Toast, this would be probably the best earring to just buy for tanking in general. Next is going to be the Dragon Steel. So if you don't have something like the Void Dark Plate artifact or the Frigid Dawn chest, then Dragon Steel is going to be a very nice chest piece to get, because of the fact that it has free Enchanted Word and it's magnified, as well as being heavy and flame condition. So if you go against enemies that have fire damage, or if you're doing a fire mutation, the flame conditioning is pretty nice because you just take 5% less damage. Obviously, if you had even more flame conditioning with Enchanted Word, that's just even better for fire-based mutations. And the last two is going to be the Scaled Gauntlets. So just like Dragon Steel, the Scaled Gauntlets is actually going to be very nice in general for tanking on a lot of bosses, especially the bosses that do slash damage. This is going to be super, super nice because it's just 5% less slash damage after you've already taken that damage, which is something I want to explain real quick. With the way conditioning works, you have to take the damage first in order to reduce the next hit from that damage. So if I have 5 pieces of slash conditioning, that doesn't mean I'm automatically taking 25% less slash damage, but what it means is if I take slash damage once, the next slash hit is going to be 25% less, and then it resets. So that's just pretty much how conditioning works. You take real damage, then less damage, real damage, less damage, real damage, less damage. And then the last one is going to be the Red Hot Slag. So the Red Hot Slag is a great alternative ring for pretty much every single build, just because it comes with Magnified and it comes with Hardy. Bloodletting makes it better for something like the Rapier builds with bleeds, but it's obviously not really good for any other build. Maybe the Spear with the Skewer, but again, it's not really great for any other build. But realistically, Red Hot Slag is just a great option for most builds when it comes to like having filler options, because it still has the chance of giving you a damage perk or a sacred, the sacred perk for healers, damage perk like thrust damage or slash damage, or even keen awareness for the extra crit chance. So yeah, I would highly recommend just getting the red hot slag. So like you would get empty hearth first, so you have the flame protection, and then just get a red hot slag, so that way you at least have a ring with hardy that you can use for any other build. Now for the last one, which is going to be Empyrean Forge, or not Empyrean Forge, Glacial Tarn, which is right here. The first one is going to be Icebreaker, which is pretty much the only hatchet in the Gypsum Kiln as far as the 5 dungeons go that I would recommend doing every day. It's probably the only one that's actually really good because Keen and Refreshing Torrent are very nice, especially if you do decide to be a hatchet DPS. You're going to want to have Refreshing Torrent so you're able to kind of pretty much use it all the time and spam it. And then the next one is going to be the Ye Ol Icebox for any Sword and Shield not DPS tanks. When it comes to the ice mutations or in a dungeon like Glacial Tarn with ice in it, and you need the ice protection, this is going to be very nice because it's just 15% less ice damage on top of all the other ice protection you're already getting. Next is going to be the Aurora's Blessing. So I wouldn't really, this isn't a staff I would highly recommend getting, but unless you already have Fortifying Sacred Ground on your gear or something, like if you have attuned leather pants and you just decide to put Fortifying Sacred Ground on your attuned leather pants, then I would recommend getting Aurora's Blessing, as it's probably going to end up being the best option for your life staff because it has 2 very, very, very strong healing perks, Mending Protection and Savior. Both of these only work though when the ally is under 50% of their health. As you can see, with Savior, healing is increased by 20%, which is the most amount of healing percentage you'll get from any perk when they're below 50% health. And the same with Mending Protection. You deal 45% outgoing healing power for 3 seconds if Orb of Protection heals an ally below 50% health. So this only works when they're under 50, but it's still a very, very, very strong life staff when they are under 50. Next is going to be the Quick and Painless. So Quick and Painless, just like the Fire Poker, is keen and keenly empowered. But again, you're only using it as a mainly like a placeholder or overall, just so you can keep your RNG going or your gambling going for enfeebling Skewer on it. And then next is going to be Heart of Cold. Heart of Cold is going to be the #1 thing you end up buying from the Glacial Tarn Materia sets because it comes with Frozen Protection and it's a magnified amulet again, so that way you can use it for any and every single build. Hopefully you get health on it, which would make this even better. And then you have Haley's Comment, which is decent, but it can also be used on every single build because it's magnified and it comes with Nimble, which is great for pretty much all builds because you roll and block with all builds. Now you have all 5 Valkyrian sets, the Arctic Valkyrian sets, which are pretty decent because they all come with Frost Conditioning and Shrinking Fort, which means they can also come with Enchanted Ward as its 3rd perk. So I would say I would recommend it. I wouldn't necessarily say to go for it, but if you have nothing else to buy with your dense Glacial Tarn Materia, then you can definitely try to gamble for these pieces and hopefully you get Enchanted Word on them because that would make them pretty solid for like doing Glacial Tarn, especially ice mutations. And then there's also the Forlorn Hope, which has magnified enfeebling and keen awareness. Very nice if you're a tank, but it doesn't have hardy. So you just have to basically hope for hardy, and then you would have a really nice tank ring because you can increase your weaken duration as well as always getting a higher crit chance because you're always in front of the enemies and the boss. They're never turned around for you, so you want to try to get more crits off so you deal more damage. Now, we're going to look at the other options. So the other options are going to be Tempest, Savage Divide, and BnB. Keep in mind, those 3 dungeons, even though they are level 60 and above requirement to do them, you cannot get 1000 materia at all from doing them. So right over here, you have Tempest at the very top at Shattered Mountain. You have Savage Divide, which is the new dungeon in Elysian Wilds, and then BnB, which is in Cutlass Keys near the Hive of Gorgon raid, which is right over here. But remember, even though you cannot get 1000 dense materia every day, you can still earn enough materia over time from doing mutations or just running them and dismantling the named items you get from them, as well as the heart runes. So let's look at Tempest. So for Tempest, there's only 3 items in here that I would recommend, which is the small shield if you do run a sword and shield as a DPS, or pretty much anything. It's it's not great at all. Like, this would probably be the last thing I would end up getting, but it is a decent 700 gear score round shield. And the round shields, the shield's gear score doesn't matter necessarily for your gear score in general. Next is going to be Heavenly Punishment. So Heavenly Punishment's pretty decent on a DPS, especially if you're running something like Gen, where you do need like Skyward Nullification, and you also need the Oblivion Nullification. I forgot exactly what it's called. Nullifying Oblivion, because the soldiers, when you hit them with the nullification, it reduces or strips their debuffs off of them, which is very, very, very nice. So all you would have to hope for is Trenchant Crits or Trenchant Strikes. And the last one, Vicious Slayers, whatever, but the last one is going to be Willpower. Willpower basically used to be the old best in slot hammer because of Thwarting Strikes and Refreshing Move, but now that you can't really spam CC chains, it's kind of like a one and done thing. You just use a few abilities and then swap back. You can no longer really spam your abilities because of Refreshing Move and Thwarting Strikes. Plus, with Thwarting Strikes, it only works when you heavy attack and no longer light attack, even with 300 strength. 300 con. But hopefully you get Sunder and Clear Out, because that would still make it a very good hammer. Next is going to be BnB. So for BnB, the first thing is going to be Pirate's Cutlass. So this is great for any Sword and Shield DPS. And the reason why is because Contagious Upheaval allows you to do 18% more damage with Upheaval, which Upheaval already does a lot of damage. Realistically, it's something you would want to have on your gear and then end up using the Butcher. But this is probably, if you don't have the Butcher, this is probably ideally one of the better swords to have. Obviously, like a Keen Vicious sword probably would be better with like Refreshing Move or something, but this is also fine. And then Enchanted is also good because you're always constantly spamming light attacks. Next is going to be the Captain's Rapier. The reason why is because, well, if you don't have something like the Finisher, this is a solid rapier to have. Keeling Jagged is kind of whatever. It's not that great, again, because you cannot stack multiple Keeling Jagged bleeds. But in terms of being solo or something, this is also pretty decent to have. But honestly, you should have the Finisher because it's very easy to get. You just go to Elysian Wilds and kill the gorilla, the named gorilla, or you could just X in recruit chat or something and say X Finisher, and normally there will be people farming for it, or you can form a group to farm for it. And the Finisher is it's basically the best rapier in the game. Next is going to be a Jagged Flotsam. So just like the other sword or the other shield, round shield, this is generally going to be a little bit better, but again, it applies Keeling Jagged, so it's okay. But you will be using Resolve anyways, so Accelerated Resolve is not going to be a dead perk to have for a DPS sword and shield player. Next is going to be the Rogue's Tool. The only reason why you would end up getting this is because it's a decent hatchet, but it's because it comes with Rogue. So Rogue is very strong in clumps, and especially hatchet because you do more damage in clumps with it. So having this is also pretty nice. It's not going to be as good as the other hatchet that I had showed, which is the Icebreaker, but if anything, like, this is also pretty decent hatchet to have. The next thing is going to be the oil jar. So the oil jar is a pretty nice bow. For those of you that are a bow player, whether you're PvP or PvE, it's also pretty nice because you do use light and heavy attacks time to time, but you also get the extra tick from flame attunement. Now, the best item I would definitely say, or one of the best items, at least weapon-wise, is going to be Mizzen Mast. And the reason why is because it comes with Trenchant Strikes. Mortal Refreshment's okay because you get cooldown off of kills, but you already get cooldowns for using heavy or light attacks anyways from the Greatsword tree. And then it comes with Dexterity, so it's also pretty nice because you are Dex slash Strength. It's 50-50 on Dex and Strength, basically. So it's definitely one of the better Greatswords, especially being the only Greatsword in the Gypsum Kiln with Trenchant Strikes. So if you want to be a Greatsword tank, it's probably the only option you really get. And then the last one, I believe, is going... Oh, not the last one. Is Swabbing Staff. So this is definitely not a life staff I would recommend getting over the others. Like, this would be the last one I would end up getting. But in terms of like something like PvP, this is pretty good to have. And then even in PvE, when allies have debuffs on them and whatnot, you can remove those debuffs, especially like in the high raid. Those poison stacks count as a debuff. There are some instances in PvE where allies will have a debuff, but you can't actually cleanse it. So Purifying Breeze and Purity of Light is kind of useless there. But in the raid with those poison debuffs, you can actually cleanse it. Not the ones that put them to sleep, but like just the poison ticks. You can cleanse those, some of them. And yeah, it's pretty nice, I guess, in terms of that. But that's really it. I wouldn't really recommend it because I'm not really a Splash of Light enjoyer, but I know that there are newer healers in the game that prefer Splash of Light because it's a nice group heal. And then the next one is going to be Plundered Hoop, which is an earring. It has Purifying Toast, which is probably more important, but it also does come with Intelligence, which is going to be nice for healers or rapier users or even like mage builds. Refreshing is pretty like okay. Now the last item, which is going to be the most important item in the game for anyone using a slash weapon, so hatchets, swords, great swords, I guess that's pretty much it. I guess there is great sword or a great axe or whatever, is the Privateer's Heirloom. The reason why this is the best ring to have is because 1, it comes with strength already, 2, it's slash damage, and 3, it has the most important perk, which is Hardy. And then basically the third perk doesn't even matter what you get. You can even get Sacred, Poison. You can get the most useless third perk because you already have 2 of the most important perks on it with strength. Ideally, having something like Leeching would be probably the best option as you just get more health back. Now, the next one is going to be, or the last one I suppose, will be Savage Divide. There's only 3 items in Savage Divide that is actually good because a lot of these items are not that great. I mean, Touch of Ice, the Icicle is actually pretty solid because of Empowered Ice Spike, very strong. So if you do want to have an IG as an offhand in PvE and want to use Ice Spike, and this is probably one of the better options, but the best option would be like a Keen, Vicious, Empowered Ice Spike. This is pretty bad. This is not good. Kite shields in general are not good. Yeah, so a lot of the weapons here are not good, especially because a lot of them are split stat and or use like pretty bad perks. But the weapon is going to be a Madhouse, which is actually very solid because it comes with Keen and Empowering Fireball with max intelligence, and then hopefully you just get Vicious, as Vicious has a high roll on your weapons. And the next one is going to be Wolf at the Door. So Wolf at the Door is not like amazing or anything, but it is a free protection amulet just in case you do feel like you need an arcane protection amulet. Would I recommend getting this first? Probably not, because it's like, just because it is a arcane protection amulet, there's just not many things that do arcane damage. but it is one of the things I would recommend end up getting eventually, possibly, if you don't already have an Arcane Protection Amulet. And the last one is going to be Mammoth's Revenge, probably the best item out of the Savage Divide Gypsum Kiln section, just because it has Nimble and Intelligence. So if you are a Rapier user or you're a mage or a healer and you feel like you need Nimble, this is probably going to be ideal for you to get. Healthy Toast isn't even it's not a bad option. Now, for the mutation section, like the Mutation Materia, there are going to be a few things here that are actually solid to get. A lot of the weapons, or pretty much every single weapon for Azoth Crystal, is going to always come with Keen and Vicious, and it's magnified. So something like the Void Gauntlet is going to be very good to get if you are a healer. Keen Vicious is very much needed in general for DPS output as a healer with a VG. What else? I suppose the Round Shield is pretty decent to get. The bow is okay. The Blunderbuss is okay. Greatsword is not that great. The Great Axe is pretty nice, especially with it being magnified. Hopefully you just get Infusing Maelstrom on it, and then it's basically the best Great Axe you could actually get if it comes with Infusing Maelstrom, because it's magnified, which allows you to use it with any build in general. You can use it as an offhand as a Rapier user, so you can help with clumps, or you can use it as a Spear or Great Axe, a Greatsword user. And then you have your spears as well, Keen, Vicious, and hopefully you just get Infusing Skewer or even Bleeding Sweep, and that's basically your really nice spear. And then the Azoth Crystal Fire Staff is also pretty solid. The amulet sucks, and the earring is not that great. Now, we're going to go ahead and look at the Azoth Crystal gear. So the Azoth Crystal gear is probably one of the best sets to actually end up going for, because it has the same perks, Enchanted Word, Magnified, and Refreshing, on all heavy, light, and medium pieces. Ideally, for the heavy set, you wouldn't go for Azoth Crystal, but for medium or light, it is something you would go for, and then hopefully you get like a weapon perk for your build, or health if you are not using a weapon perk. The best set to use for heavy is going to be the Frigid Dawn set, because it comes with 2 illegal perks, which is Enchanted Word and Elemental Aversion. Both of these share the same exact damage reduction pool, which means you cannot get a roll on any drops or craft anything with Enchanted Word and an Aversion perk. And yeah, so that's why the Frigid Dawn set is the best set to have in terms of heavy tanking, because it's just 2 defensive damage reduction perks on the gear. And then you have the Firelord's Cuirass, which has Fire Harnessing and Enchanted Word, but unfortunately it is only a heavy set, so you wouldn't really be able to use this unless you're using like a featherweight, so then you could possibly use like 2 heavy pieces. And then the last thing, so everything else is pretty much not that great. Like, all these are decent. I guess you could get some of the Blighted Growth sets as long as it comes with Enchanted Word, but like again, it's just not that great. The last thing would be the Azoth Crystal Ring. It's probably the only other ring I would recommend getting, just because of the fact that it has Hardy on it and Leeching, which is 2 very nice. One of them which is very important, and then Leeching is also very nice to have. And then hopefully you just get something useful like Sacred for healing, or you get a damage perk like Keen Awareness or Thrust Damage or Slash Damage on the ring as your 3rd perk, and then it's pretty much useful for everything. And you have Magnify on it, so it can be used for any build. And I guess the same thing with the Isabella's items, because it comes with Enchanted Word and Harnessing, so it's decent for healers when you're using Void Blade, but basically only if you're using Featherweight though. If you're using Featherweight, then you can actually end up using some of the Isabella's Gaze items. But that's basically everything. I know like that was a lot that I had gone through, but yeah, that's literally every single item that I would highly recommend going for when it comes to doing your gypsum, your like just going into the gypsum kiln. Whether you're doing your daily dungeons and you end up getting enough materia, dense materia. Again, remember it's only Ennead, Gen, Laz, Forge, and Glacial Tarn that gives those daily dungeon quests. No other dungeons will give dense materia, 1,000 dense materia, other than those five. And then again, if you do end up doing those other dungeons because they're like mutated, or you just enjoy doing those dungeons and you're just farming for materia, because you can still get those items from those other dungeons if you do them and you break down the named items and you break down the what is it? It's right over here, the heart runes. Like I can break down. Oops. I can salvage. Let's just see, and then it gives you Amrine. It's just regular Amrine, I guess. So I break the dark heart ascent. Oh no, these only give regular ones. Oh, that's unfortunate. But anyways, you dismantle some of the named items and whatnot, and you can get dense materia for them. Um, but yeah, hopefully this video helped you guys out. If it did, go and leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know down in the comment section as well, and I will try my best to help you guys out as much as I can. I know this is a long video. This is quite a lot, but I did have a few people asking me about what they should buy with their gypsum kiln or their materials and whatnot. So hopefully this helps you guys out. And again, this is only for PvE, not PvP. So if you are wanting to find something useful for PvP, just go ahead and look at the gypsum kiln and see what you think is good. But anyways, that's pretty much it. Have a good day, good night, and peace.